We take another field, that of civil rights in the field to travel or speak. 10 years ago, even 7 years ago, there were many communities in the United States where you could not speak as freely as you can today. But one of the results of the ferment of the 1960s was that there is more freedom of speech. In actual, the law, of course, is the same, though there was always a law saying you had the right to speak, but the law was not obeyed. And so that in actual practice, there is more freedom of speech. And interestingly enough, this is the one issue which will unite many people. Angela Davis is out of jail today, not because she's a communist, because many people deeply disagree with her political opinions, but because they felt it was wrong that she should be in jail simply because she was a communist. And similarly, in Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people gathered 2 weeks ago to promote the liberation of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is like an American colony. And the 20,000 people there were deeply divided. There were people there who think that Mao Zedong is a crook, and there were people there who think that Mao Zedong is a savior. There were people who believed in extremely immediate violent tactics, people who believed just the opposite in slow, long-term, peaceful pressure, but they were all there. And when one or another speaker would try and attack somebody else that was in the same building, cries from the audience would come, "Unidad, unidad," in other words, unity. Stop being divisive, concentrate on one thing. And to a certain extent, this spirit, America is full of people trying to see how we can find some unity. I made up a song also, saying false from true. I don't know if you ever heard that song. When my songs turn to ashes on my tongue, when I look in the mirror and see I'm no longer young, then I got to start the job of separating false from true. And then I know I need the love of you. Let me see if I can play it on the guitar. When I found tarnish on some of my brightest dreams, when some folks I trusted turned out not quite what they seemed, then I got to start the job separating false from true. And then I know I need the love of you.
Thank you very much. So, in short, after 35 years of singing, and after being closely tied in with, involved in many crucial happenings in America, you don't feel any despair, and you don't feel disillusioned about the function of art as a weapon, as a propagandistic and agitational weapon?
I don't think of it as a weapon in the narrow sense. Rockwell Kent, the painter, once said to me, he said, "You know, a bread knife is a weapon, but it also cuts bread." And I think that music, too, can do many different things. Sometimes the same song can do many things. It can mean different things. As a matter of fact, within the past few years, I've been quite amused to see how you can turn the meanings of things upside down, and what one person thought was a weapon going this direction turns to be a weapon going that direction.
You have said many times that Woody Guthrie inspired you when you started. What would you say was his most lasting impression he did on you in an artistic way or in a human way, or and would you say that your development as a singer and artist has very much to thank Woody Guthrie for?
I wish I could answer that in a few words. I wrote a whole chapter in this book, The Incomplete Folk Singer, trying to say what I learned from Woody. His honesty, his refusal to give up. You know, he had this incurable disease, and he could have given up right at the beginning because the doctors told him it was incurable. And he looked at a friend of mine, he said, "I guess only God can cure me." Woody in his own way was very religious, but he nevertheless refused to give up. He felt it was wrong to give up. And for 13 years he lived on in the hospital with his body deteriorating till he could no longer speak, he could no longer focus his eyes, he couldn't control his hands so he could brush his teeth or wash his face, but he still refused to give up. Maybe that's one of the important things I learned from him. I also learned his sense of choosing. Now he read everything, but he chose very carefully what he was going to sing himself. He might listen to music from 100 different countries, but when he sang himself, he was going to stick to what he knew. And people in New York sometimes thought he was a phony for wearing Oklahoma clothes when he was walking in New York. They figured that if you live in New York, you should wear New York clothes. But no, he just kept on wearing the same boots and blue jeans and broad-brimmed cowboy hat that he'd worn in Oklahoma. He was determined that he was not going to let the world change him that much. I remember once he penciled a note to himself when he read a lot of Walt Whitman, and he admired some of the things in Walt Whitman, but then he said, "I must steer clear of Walt Whitman's swimmy waters." There's all that unrhymed verse and so on. It's dangerous, because I think he recognized in himself a weakness for just running on and not tightening up his own poetry. So it was this interesting combination between keeping his eyes open, looking everywhere, but when it came to what he was going to do, he was very particular. He didn't want to get led astray. In a sense, he was a purist. He was walking the straight and narrow. I decided everybody's a purist in one way or another. Jesse James, the outlaw, he says, "My 6-gun never lied." Jesse James was a purist. And some people may be a purist in sex, other people may be a purist in food, other people are purist in music, other people are purist in grammar, or somebody else a purist in the way he holds a carpentry tool.
I would like to ask you, could you speculate for just a moment on what would have happened if Woody Guthrie had not been hospitalized in 52, or was it 54? If he had gone on living like any normal being, where would he have been now? He would have been 60. In what direction would he have been moving during the 60s and so on? Have you ever thought of that?
I've often speculated on it. I'm quite sure that he would have been one of the first people in the 50s, even without waiting for the 60s, who would have let his hair grow very long and grown a long beard. He really wanted to get close to nature in a way and live naturally. He also might have done a great deal of traveling again, because he really did have ants in his pants, as they say. He was always curious to visit some new place. But exactly, I couldn't say exactly. I think he might have been much more angry than I or other people at some of the mistakes made by socialist countries after having put so much faith in them. Whether he would have called them crimes, I'm not sure, because in his own way he was a very forgiving man. He was very strict and stern, but he was very understanding also.